After their shopping trip, Mike spent 3/5 of his money. Yvonne spent a half of her money and Sue spent $50. They then had the same amount of money left. If the total amount of money left was $54, what was the total amount of money Mike and Sue had at first? Now, actually, this is a really neat problem. I like it. But there's one tricky area I've already noticed. I don't know if you've noticed it. But here we have Mike. Okay, we've got Mike, we've got Yvonne, and we've got Sue. But what I've noticed here is that we are asked, the question is, how much money did Mike and Sue have at first? Okay, so it's just Mike and Sue, not Yvonne, and it's how much money they had at first. It's very important that you notice what the question is asking you because for any question or any model that's set out, they've set out this scenario, what's happening. There's lots of questions they could ask. Okay, and you have to make sure that you're answering the question that they are asking. Okay, let's give this a go. And the reason why I think it might be interesting is because even though it has this, Mike spending 3/5, Yvonne spends a half, which doesn't really fit in with the fifths very well, and then Sue's spending $50. But what is interesting and makes it maybe easy to model is the fact that they had the same amount of money left. So let's start by drawing a bar for Mike, and we are going to split his into fifths. Okay, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I've given Mike a bar, and I will check it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've split his money into fifths. And we know that he spent 3/5 of that. So this is what Mike spent. Okay, so this was spent. And this is what let's do this. This is what he had at first. And we know this is important because we're looking at what Mike and Sue had at first. Okay. And then we've got Yvonne. Now, I know that in the printed answers, if you've looked at that, it puts Sue next, but I don't think that's what you would do if you had a question like this. I think you would put Yvonne next because she comes next in the question. Okay, so let's look at Yvonne. Now, it says that Yvonne spent half of her money. Okay. But the other bit of information we have is that at the end, they all had the same amount of money left. So that is really important. So that means I can draw this for Yvonne. She had this amount of money left. It's the same as what Mike has left. And I'm going to, this is the same as this. So I like to keep the parts equal. So I'm going to give her 2 parts. This is what she had left. And if she spent a half of her money, that means she must have had 2 more of these parts. Okay, so thus this must be what Yvonne had at first. Okay, so this is what Yvonne had at first, although we're not actually asked to calculate what Yvonne had at first. But so this is again at first, and this is what Yvonne spent. Okay, so we've dealt with Yvonne, and we are told that Sue spent $50. We don't know if that was what proportion of her money that was, but again, what do we know? That they had the same amount of money left. So here's Sue, and we're going to give her the same. And we're going to also just do that she's got the same amount of money left. We're going to just sort of extend her bar randomly. I don't know how big that was, but this is this whole thing. This is the at first. Okay, and we know that this has a value of 50 because it says that Sue spent 50. She spent 50 and she ended up with the same amount of money as Yvonne and Mike. Okay, so now where are we? It says, so let me just check if I've captured all of the information. Yes, I've captured that. Yes, I've captured that. And I have captured that. And the fact that they had the same amount of money left, I'm happy with that. Now, here's the next bit. If the total amount of money left was $54, okay, and then I need to use that to work out the total amount that Mike and Sue had at first. Okay, so what is left? Well, what's left is these portions here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. And what I could do is, you could draw this again, but I don't think it's necessary personally. This is what's left, and this has a value of 54. Okay, so 54, okay, 54 is the value of 6 parts. So if we divide 54 by 6, that's going to give us 9. That's giving us the value of each of these parts. Okay, so now let's see what we can figure out. Well, now we've got, again, back to the question. What's the total amount? That's the total amount of money that Mike and Sue had at first. So Mike had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, and Sue had 2 parts plus $50. Okay, now you could work out how much Mike had separately if you wanted, and then how much Sue had. But what I'm going to do is, because I've got these, I'm going to, let's say, right, this is what he had at first. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got, for the two of them together, I've got 7 times 9, okay, plus $50. All right, that's what I've got here. So what is 7 times 9? Well, 7 times 9 gives me 63. And then I need to just add my $50. Okay, so that's going to give me 3, and that is going to give me 11. So in total, what do Mike and Sue have at first? That's $113. Okay, so it's just a case of keeping track of what your model is showing you. You could have redrawn this part. I don't think that's necessary. And just paying very careful attention to what the question is asking you for, especially if there's a beginning situation and an end situation. And I think we had this extra tricky bit here where there's 3 people, but they're only asking for what 2 people had at first.